As extreme weather events continue to claim lives and livelihoods across the globe. I think that's quite a terrifying number. So even as we enjoy the benefits of a cool and comfortable environment, our less privileged citizens and cohabitants of this planet bear the vagaries of climate change and extreme temperatures to provide us our daily bread, especially, I would say, the small and marginal farmers. So spare a thought for them. I think we need to commit ourselves to working together as equal stakeholders to both mitigate the effects of climate change and I think find adaptation strategies to ensure the sustainability of our planet. So it is with this intent that we promote an exchange of ideas and experiences from multiple perspectives with particular attention to explore workable solutions. That Planet Dialogue will focus on the water, energy, agriculture nexus in the context of climate change. I think some people have been debating the use of word nexus, but clearly I think there is a positive correlation which we all need to be aware of and address. The day's deliberations will examine the most pressing and interconnected challenges of food security, poverty, and declining regenerative capacity of the soil and water systems. And of course, in the second half, look at cases across the spectrum of technology, finance, policy, regulatory aspects to build understanding of alternate pathways. The event's agenda includes moderated panel discussions with experts from the fields of climate adaptation, mitigation, and policy domains in the first half of the day. The second half includes showcasing of innovations by startups and established players in the realm of water, energy, and agri-biomass and waste recycling. So I think pretty packed, interesting day, and I'm sure all of us will benefit from the proceedings today. It is our belief that even as the day's proceedings awaken you to the perils of climate change that we are all living with and perhaps contributing towards, they will also give us hope and potential solutions to deal with the challenges of climate change. As the IPCC report 22 mentions, adaptation is crucial. Feasible solutions already exist, but more support must reach the vulnerable communities. So clearly a lot of focus and conversations will be about vulnerable communities and what we can do for them. So before I invite the keynote speakers on stage to start the day's proceedings, a quick mention of the organizers of the event. We have an eCube Investments Advisors Private Limited, which was established with a vision to engage and empower for ESG, and is founded by a team with deep corporate and operational experience in an environment, social, and governance-focused platform. eCube's mission is to transform the climate and ESG landscape in India. eCube's ESG solutions support investors, companies in the ESG journey, of course, helping develop business relevant to ESG strategies and their deployment. eCube is also developing distinct channels to accelerate the growth of ESG and climate change and related investments in India with innovative solutions for debt and equity. The other partner, of course, Cognisphere Solutions Limited. Cognisphere is actually a synthesis of two words: cognition, which means knowledge and mindfulness, and sphere, which is representing the planet. So CSL aspires for sustainability and equity through informed actions and mindful approaches, shaping a more inclusive and sustainable world. CSL, founded in April 22 as a public limited company, is committed to developing and executing innovative solutions that generate positive social, economic, and environmental impacts. So on behalf of eCube Investment Advisors and Cognisphere Solutions, I once again welcome you to Planet Dialogue 2024. It is now my pleasure to welcome on stage our keynote speakers for the day. First, Dr. Ajay Mathur, Director General, International Solar Alliance. If you could please come to the stage, please, sir. As a brief introduction, Dr. Ajay Mathur is an Indian energy sector specialist, serves as the Director General of the International Solar Alliance. Previously, he held leadership roles at the Energy and Resource Institute and India's Bureau of Energy Efficiency. He contributed to India's climate change policies as a member of the Prime Minister's Council on Climate Change and was part of India's negotiating team at the 2015 UN Climate Change Conference. He has co-authored Energy Efficiency Matters with Leher Thadani. We also have Dr. Ashok Gulati, whom I would invite to come on stage. I would perhaps do a more detailed introduction to him when I invite him to call and to speak on stage. But for now, it's Dr. Ajay Mathur, who's, we believe, clearly a stalwart in his own right and very relevant, we believe, to set the ball rolling at Planet Dialogue 2024. So welcome, Dr. Mathur.
Thanks. Don't mind. There you go. Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction, and more importantly, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. What I'd like to do is to start the ball rolling today, to focus on the key issues that I believe are at the intersection of, number one, enhancing the incomes, the revenue of farmers per hectare. That's number one. Number two, in the process, reduce the amount of water that is utilized for the production of that. So reduce the amount of water used per hectare. And third, and equally important, is reduce the amount of carbon emissions which lead to carbon dioxide emissions and therefore mitigation. But I think it is equally important that we look at this as a resilience strategy, because what it does is it enables local control over where we do the farming. So it's these three things coming together that we are looking at. And at the moment, we have something of the order of about 20 million agricultural pumps in the country. We have something of which about 8 million are diesel and 12 million are electric. And what I'd like to argue right now is that as far as economics is concerned, as far as the cost of water delivered per cubic meter or per liter is concerned, a solar pump is certainly superior to a diesel pump as far as the farmer's pocket is concerned, and is also superior to an electric pump as far as the overall pocket, the farmer's pocket plus the national pocket or the pocket of the electricity companies is concerned, because electricity is provided at a very low cost, if not free, to farmers. What it therefore implies is that you need very different strategies for pushing in solar pumps for replacing diesel and solar pumps for replacing electric pumps. And I'll focus on those in a moment. The second and third issues on which I will briefly talk about is the use of solar cold storages, because remember, our goal is to enhance the revenue. And therefore, what we are talking about is how do we get the farmer to get the best value for his product. And therefore, the availability of cold storage across this, today, the number of cold storages which are in truly rural areas in India is less than 1/3. Why? Because of the erratic electricity supply. Erratic electricity supply means that you need a diesel genset to run the cold storage. If you have a diesel genset running the cold storage, it becomes very expensive. And then farmers don't come in. So what solar does is it provides an alternative. It provides an alternative to electricity being available all the time and being available certainly at prices which are much less than that of diesel. In fact, if you do it on a long-term basis, it is less than the cost of electricity. The third thing which I will again very briefly mention is the upcoming issue of agri-photovoltaics. And Ashok Bhai can talk much more knowledgeably about this. He is actually doing right now as we speak a demonstration project on how agri-photovoltaics work. I think where all of us are looking at is how do you get these agri-photovoltaics, which is agriculture, which is photovoltaics on top and agriculture at the bottom. So the farmer gets two revenue streams, one from the sale of the crops and the second from the sale of the electricity. But as we all know, the devil lies in the detail. What will grow beneath the shade, what agriculture will grow beneath the shade of the photovoltaics? That's something that we are all trying to find out. Second, under what conditions will the large amount of electricity that is generated from the agri-photovoltaics be converted and be accepted by the electricity companies? And I say this because to a very, very large extent, the program for the buying of electricity from solar pumps has not really taken off. If it has taken off, it has taken off only in the sense that when you have large photovoltaic installations, say at the rural substation, and that rural substation buys electricity at something of the order of 3 rupees per kilowatt hour. In Maharashtra, for example, by their own submissions, it costs them 7 rupees 48 paisa to get grid electricity to the rural substation. And then from the rural substation, this solar electricity at 3 rupees per kilowatt hour is provided to the farmers. It's provided during the day when the farmer needs it. And the electricity distribution company minimizes the loss that it makes in the distribution of electricity. The point I'm making is that the electricity companies' views on the loss making or the loss of the most paying consumers is a key issue as we go ahead. So let me therefore end. Well, why end? I have not even begun. Let me therefore very quickly focus on these three things. I, for example, am a marginal farmer in central UP. And about 9 years ago, I got an agricultural pump. I got 2/3 subsidy from the central government and the UP government at that time. But I still had to pay 1 lakh and I think 7,000 if I'm not wrong. I could do it because I had a second job. But in rural areas where the cash flow is an issue, the availability of this money became a problem. So, for example, I was 105th in the district when the list was made. But I was the only person where the pump was actually installed, who actually paid for the installation of the pump. The prices may have reduced now, but the subsidy, but the amount that the farmer has to pay is somewhere in the vicinity of 80 to 90,000. This is a challenge. And what it implies is that even though, at least as far as diesel pumps is concerned, even though this is a more cost-effective solution, the first cost is a major cost. And consequently, what we argue for, and I know that Ashok has also been arguing for, is the fact that this money needs to be provided upfront to farmers. NABARD's refinancing of agricultural loans could be something through which this is done. But the availability of this money is an issue, because when the banks start lending to farmers, they start looking for capital equipment. They start looking at a range of other things, and therefore say that the farmer is not a viable is not credit worthy. This is a challenge that we will need to overcome. Yes, a option is the Maharashtra model. The Maharashtra model is now being upscaled because the Maharashtra government has asked the World Bank for a loan through which it can provide these kinds of large means they're less than 2 megawatts. That's the largest. They're typically in the range of 1 to 2 megawatts at the rural substations. So it is possible that electric pumps may get electricity which is from solar. That is possible. But it would need these kinds of business models to come in. For diesel gensets, the issue is it can be changed today, but it is not. Again, the issue is that we need to enable the local banks to make available this. Consequently, for this to come under priority sector lending would be a first step. But more than anything else, the availability of these resources to the banks would help in reducing their fears that they would lose money by making these loans. So I think for the electricity replacement, we are looking at models in which the electricity companies' losses are minimized. For diesel pumps, we are looking at loans to farmers. Let me very, very briefly spend time on the solar cold storages and agri PV. So, generally speaking, as I have walked through the cold storages that are available, by far and large, what the temperature that we need is approximately 3 to 4 degrees centigrade. There are a few places, for example, on the coast where fisheries is a large industry where you need less than 0 degrees centigrade. But generally speaking, you need it. So there is a number of companies who are now producing cold storages where solar electricity is used to run the cooling system during the day. But what it also does is that during the day, it chills water. And the chilled water is used to provide the coolth during the night. It therefore does not need a battery. It is therefore that much more robust. And as the Solar Alliance, we have installed these in 4 countries. In 4 countries, these have already been installed. Consequently, what we are looking at is the ability of upscaling this program. And upscaling this program again means that you need a business model. You need to have local entrepreneurs, and therefore capacity building becomes a key issue on making these things happen. There are 2 parts to it. One is that you need capacity, you need understanding. The second is you need financing for the upfront cost. And I hope that the availability of financing, these would be largely private sector companies, that the availability of financing through bank loans and through equity investments would help us move in this direction. Because this is ultimately, again, an issue where the first cost is the key issue. It makes economic sense, but it pays back in about 4.5 years. But the first cost is the major issue. The last point that I would like to make is on agri-photovoltaics. On agri-photovoltaics, as I said, you're looking at an agriculture and a PV system on top and agriculture below. The question is what will grow under what circumstances? Ashok Bhai, in the Delhi region, Delhi, Rajasthan and?
Rajasthan, Gujarat and Maharashtra.
There are experiments that are being done. We are doing it in about 10 locations. What we hope is that we get an idea of what works under what agroclimatic zones, because what will grow under different agroclimatic zones is different. The other issue that is related to this is, yes, you've got a large amount of agro PV and therefore a large amount of electricity that can flow into the grid. Yes, that's good. But where is this happening? If the crops are tomatoes, chilies, and so on, vegetables, then peri-urban areas is where they will grow. And therefore the electricity is put into the main urban grid. On the other hand, if there are more commodity-like type crops that are that can grow, then you are looking at providing this electricity in rural areas where local communities could access it. Therefore, how electricity distribution companies will look at it will obviously be different as well. But this is very much work in progress. I'm hoping that in a year, 2 years, we'll have a much better idea of what grows under PV under different circumstances, what are the kinds of linkages that can happen with the electricity distribution companies, and therefore what are the kinds of policy changes that would be needed. I want to leave you with the fact that there are many options. I've talked of 3, but there could be more. There are many options for which enhance the income of farmers, which reduce the amount of water used per hectare, and which also reduce the amount of carbon dioxide emissions per liter or cubic meter of water. I think, in a sense, our imagination is the limit. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mathur. That was a great start off to the event. And I think it's interesting you looked at the issue of enhancing revenue of farmers while reducing water usage and reducing carbon emission. I think as a champion of solar energy, you've presented that as an option for us, but clearly you've left it to our imagination to see what solutions we find. So I am hoping that as a group today and perhaps going forward, we will be able to find more such solutions that work at the nexus of agriculture, water, energy. So thank you so much for the start. It is now my pleasure to invite Dr. Ashok Gulati, who is a distinguished professor at the Indian Council for Research and International Economic Relations. Dr. Gulati brings a wealth of experience to the table. Previously, he chaired the Commission for Agriculture Costs and Prices and held key roles at institutions like RBI, NABARD, and NCDX. Dr. Gulati's expertise extends to serving as an independent director on various boards and advising agriculture policies. He is also a regular columnist at the Indian Express, contributing valuable insights on climate and agriculture. I guess we wouldn't have asked for a better mind to share his thoughts on the water, energy, agriculture nexus in the context of climate change. Over to you, Dr. Gulati.
Thank you very much. Morning to everyone, and thanks especially to Shankar and Satya who got me here. I don't have any slides, so just relax. My talk for 20 minutes is going to be on planet, policies, and peasants. But in between there will be innovations and how to scale them up. That is the real challenge before us. Planet. We love this planet. We exist because of this planet. 4.5 billion years old is this planet. The first microbial life on this planet came about 3.5 to 3.6 billion years back. But my tribe, the Homo sapiens, are only 2 to 3 lakh years old. It took us 2 to 3 lakh years, literally, to multiply, and we became 1 billion in 1804. 1 billion in 1804, about a journey of 200,000 to 300,000 years. But the next billion was added in 123 years. By 1927, we were 2 billion. 1927, 2 billion, and today, less than 100 years, we are 8 billion plus. This planet on its own, I'll quote the father of Green Revolution, Norman Borlaug. He said, on its own it has a capacity to feed maximum 4 billion people. So who are the other 4 who would volunteer to die of starvation? That's an issue. And there have been those famines in the past. Science came to rescue us. But science, like fire, has 2 sides. High-yielding variety seeds, I'll just give you a glimpse. China, I don't know how many people know in the room, during the Great Leap Forward, 1958 to 61, 30 million people died of starvation. 30 million, 3 crore आदमी starvation से मर गया. And we know, younger generation may not remember, but you and me, hopefully, Ajay would know, mid-1960s, we were ship-to-mouth country. 10 million tons of wheat was coming, we didn't have the foreign exchange to pay for it, and it was coming at the PL 480, and from the ship directly to the mouths of the people, otherwise millions would have starved to death. Books were written at that time by Paddock brothers, nobody can save India, it's a basket case, let it drown. The title was Famine 1975, that India will experience bigger famines than even China and millions will starve to death. But one miracle seed, the high-yielding variety seed, which came from Mexico, Norman Borlaug, who was working with Rockefeller Foundation at that time, 18,000 tons of seeds came to India. This is the largest ever shipment of seeds. And that seed, the first flush of grain, it was distributed in Punjab, Haryana, Western UP belt, and the first crop that came in 67 was like a burst of grain. So much so, FCI and Agriculture Prices Commission were created in 1965, expecting that when the new technology comes, the production will increase and prices will collapse and farmers will suffer. So they said, we will procure at a minimum support price. So when they started procuring, they didn't have the godowns. The primary schools in Punjab had to be closed down. The first godowns of FCI in Punjab were the classrooms of our own children. And by 1972, we were talking literally, oh, we don't need PL4. Actually 71, if you remember, we had a war with Pakistan. Bangladesh was created out of that war, and US was against us at that time. 7th Fleet was coming to stop us. But before that, they started tightening our PL 480 tap. And India said, thank you very much for your support, we don't need it anymore. because we were becoming more or less self-sufficient. Then again there was a drought and we had to go back. You remember that picture? My vintage people would perhaps recall that picture, Indira Gandhi with Reagan at that time. And he said, well, there is enough food, but we will not give you free anymore. Not against rupee payments. If you have dollars, take it. As simple as that. And dollar was all through our biggest, we always wanted to have our exchange rate. Oh, we are strong. And the net result was we were in a perpetual deficit of foreign exchange till 91. The biggest achievement of reforms of 91 is not growth rates. From $1.4 billion, today we are sitting at $640 billion. Otherwise we would have been like Pakistan. This is the biggest resilience, bigger than perhaps your climate resilience. Because all the shocks can be absorbed with the import bill that you have to pay if at all we need it. Anyway, that's one part of the story. The main thing I want to hammer on your topic, when the population exploded, the science had to come to rescue, and agriculture shaped a very different structure around the world to produce more. So the forests had to be cleared. And these new varieties wanted more water and more fertilizers and more chemicals. So the chemicalization of the entire agriculture sector to save those 4 billion people who would have died otherwise was in a way the biggest success story of humanity, but also it has damaged the planet, not because those things are wrong as such, but we don't know how to use them properly. So it's a medicine. If you don't know how to use it and you keep on putting all the capsule and tablets without consulting the doctor, you know what happens. So we damaged our soil, organic carbon, which Ratan Lal, the World Food Laureate, who has worked all his life on soil, says should be 1.5 to 2 in the soil. 60% of our soils are less than 0.5. So they are literally in ICU. Over chemicalization and not enough carbon in our soils. So that's the first thing that we have damaged. Water. The states that saved us from starvation, Punjab, 2000 to 2022, the latest data that is available, the water table, groundwater table has gone down by 11 meters, and in the constituency of the current Chief Minister, Sangrur, it has gone down by more than 22, 23 meters. 25 meters. So you are having more than a meter a year decline in some of the districts of Punjab. Reason. Now that's what I'll come down to, because that's where my focus is, but let me complete. So the land we have damaged, the water we have damaged, and then the air. What is happening to greenhouse gas emissions? It all started off with clearing of the forests around the world. Agriculture, and in global context, is about 24% of the greenhouse gas emissions. But if you take the full food system approach, it goes up to 37%. So agriculture is not just cultivation. The food has to go from the producer to the consumer. So the entire chain food system approach that we need to take. In Indian case, we show, we have much less, 14% greenhouse gas emissions coming from cultivation. We don't count what is happening in the food system as such. And we don't account really for what was happening to our forests and other things. So it's basically the cultivation. Livestock, we have 303 million bovine population. methane because the diets are so poor. So basically, and half the animals, that bovine, which is the he part at least in this world, doesn't have much of work, so they are all on the roads, quite a few of them. And because of religious concerns, you can't cull out. Although this year, 23-24, India did export 3.7 billion worth of buffalo meat. We call it buffalo, we don't call it beef. So, all said and done, we have the largest bovine population living on very meager diets, leading to a lot of methane emission without much of productivity. Rice, 47 million hectares. You flood the field, that's a pond of nothing else but methane. Then, on top of that, in a place like Punjab, the savior of the country from food scarcity, 253 kilograms of rice, fertilizers we apply per hectare. The urea that we are applying, 90% subsidized. So a lot of urea, granular form. The plant doesn't consume more than 35% of that. The rest is going in the environment, nitrous oxide, 273 times the carbon equivalents. Or it is leaching into the groundwater, high nitrate content, making water non-potable. So you are subsidizing to create poison in the system. And why rice when that is not suited there? 65% of our rice area is irrigated, and Punjab is 100% irrigated, and it's all flooded. Two policies. Free electricity, keep the switch on. Second, open-ended procurement of rice. Punjab procures more rice than it produces rice. It comes all the way from your place, UP or Bihar even. Ji sadke, jo bhi aaye, everything is good because we get good tax money from the center. So highly subsidized urea, the cheapest in the world. Normally it should be 4:2:1, the NPK ratio. In Punjab it will be like 25:5 or totally out of context. We have spent crores in doing soil health cards, but those soil health cards cannot be linked to how much the farmer needs really on that. What's the point of that? So there is a disaster taking place on the soil. There is a disaster taking place on groundwater, at least in this so-called green revolution basket, and we are creating greenhouse gas emissions like anything. It's not only methane, nitrous oxide on top of that, and then all the tractors and harvest combines, the carbon coming out of that, and finally the nail in the coffin is the stubble burning, which makes Delhi can't breathe in November. You know, it goes to more than 400. I think any other country would have declared emergency and just sit down at home. 400 plus AQI is a crime. And we have failed to arrest that. Last, biodiversity. 80% plus area in a Punjab state would be just wheat and rice. So all the biodiversity, crop diversity, it was only 4.8% in 1960, and today it is 40%, rice alone, 40%. So it has displaced all other crops. Reason? Same policies. 30% of the profit in rice cultivation in Punjab comes from only two, fertilizer subsidy and power subsidy, and both are killers. And our political masters, first thing they announce, I don't want to name any party, I don't belong to any party, I belong to this country and this planet. First thing they announce is free electricity. That's a killer. open-ended procurement, because we announce free wheat and rice, and then we talk about millet missions. When you are giving free rice and wheat to 800 million people, who is going to buy millets? So both the ends don't work together. Now, what is the solution? My job is to talk more on policies, but also some innovations, especially what Ajay talked about, and I'll give towards the end. Repurposing at least two policies which are under center's control. Last year, 23-24, our revised estimate of the budget of the center was 45 lakh crores. Out of that, food subsidy and fertilizer subsidy were 4 lakh crores. The latest estimate is that the food subsidy will go beyond 1.88. Food subsidy was 2.12 lakh crores and fertilizer subsidy was 1.88 lakh crores. This will go to 1.95. So you take it that almost 10% of the budget of the center is being spent on these two subsidies. We looked at what is happening to fertilizer from the input-output table. How much of fertilizer is leaking away from agriculture? It's not being consumed in agriculture because it is so cheap. Entire plywood industry is damn happy. Glass industry is happy using that. Even some of our milk producers are using urea to produce milk. So there is a massive leakage. The earlier input-output table showed us 38% was leaking away. We are so generous, entire Nepal is being fed by us. Even it is going to Bangladesh and others. The latest estimates are anywhere from 20 to 25% of urea at least is not being used in agriculture. And wherever it is being used most is being used in a very imbalanced fashion of NPK ratio, what should be the optimal and what is being used. So that entire policy. Now, what do we do? Can we give, and interestingly, urea granular is 90% subsidized, but the soluble fertilizers, if you want to use in the drip, where the efficiency, nutrient use efficiency will go from 35% to 90%, and no greenhouse gas nitrous oxide, that is not subsidized. Okay? So the solution is right there. To cut down nitrous oxide as well as more than double the nutrient use efficiency. You promote fertigation all across, wherever it is feasible. Water guzzler crops, 3 crops take more than 70% of the irrigation water of the country. Rice, wheat, sugarcane. Sugarcane we have been hearing drip, drip, drip for 30 years I have been hearing. Not more than 10% area. All the factories should be by regulation. You cannot have a factory unless at least 50% of your catchment area is under drip. Pass that regulation. Those factories will not get any loans. ESG you are talking about. How do you tinker through regulation? Increase their loan rates from 8-9% to 12%. Punish them. And for drip or this solar, declare it as priority sector lending. It should be part of that. And give interest subvention. When you are giving from 9 to 7% for crop loans, and if he is regular in paying, you are giving him at 4%. Why can't you give for this? Banks would love it because it's a long-term investment they are making and the entire landscape will change. The farmer can have the third crop. 2 regular ones because it will have irrigation, so 2 it can have below that, and third will be if you can evacuate the power and sell it to the central grid. And for that, the issue, single person here, single person there is not going to succeed. We need to create the way we created milk cooperatives, solar cooperatives. So pick up block by block, build that system so that evacuation is easy without much of losses, and give upfront loans to the farmers to have an equity partnership of 25% or so, and other investors, private investors will come to install that with spacing. Nowadays, Ajay, you don't need really putting it up under the shade. The latest technology in Germany, she is coming from Germany, is you can actually put it this way and from both sides it is having. So all these new panels that are coming up, extremely innovative. So we did a global survey from Japan, China to Germany and all that. There is so much innovation going on. Issue is how do we scale it up? Who could imagine in dairy, when we started off, in 1951, India was producing 17 million tons. US was producing 53 million tons, the top player, 3 times higher than. In 22-23, India was producing 230 million tons and US was at 103 million tons. India is more than double of US. And it was not done by high productivity cows of 30 kiloliters a day. It was done by an institutional innovation, putting the small holders together. And even 2 liters of milk can be sourced. And then it is processed and sent to the consumer. Why can't we make Doodh Data, Anna Data to Urja Data? So we have to think of the policy to create a critical mass, a critical scale, and that would require financing, it would require a strategy, how to evacuate that. I was in Agra, you come from UP, right? We were doing on potatoes, looking at the value chain of potatoes. Agra is the hub of potato storage for the country as a whole. Literally all throughout the year they are sending it to Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and we are not. All of them were on electricity coming at 10 rupees per kilowatt hour because they are commercial. 10 rupees per kilowatt hour. The entire hub of Agra can be converted into solar at 4, 3, and it can consume all the electricity actually, they may not be left with. So you pick up a block or a district and create a new model. And for that the financing would be needed to scaling up, and that is where the banks need to be roped in, and a little tweak in the policy that all this should be treated as priority sector lending for agriculture. Agriculture is not just crops, it is the food system approach. So when you are talking of fisheries, so fisheries have to be put in the cold storage at zero. Who is going to invest in that? Small fishermen cannot do that. So some business people have to. So that's whether we take a cooperative model or a private sector model. And the experience of milk is very fascinating. We started off cooperatives. In 2002-03, Mr. Vajpayee took a bold decision. Because earlier in 91, actually Manmohan Singh tried to open up the dairy sector. But Mr. Kurian was sitting there, the milkman of India. He said, oh, he's going to destroy all my dairy. Private sector, I don't want to see private sector in dairy. But Mr. Vajpayee took that bold decision. And because cooperatives were not processing even 10% of the production of milk after 40, 50 years of so-called cooperative movement. So when he opened that, private sector came in a big way in the same model. Amul model is being replicated by all these private sector from Hudson to Heritage to others. And the growth became double engine growth. And they have no problem of finance. So I think we need to go for public-private partnership. I know many people here belong to NGOs who are working on the ground. And that's a very critical part of the job, being on the ground and looking at where So as we go forward to scale up, I think we need this ground information, what is happening and where are the teething problems. That needs to be fed back to the policy system and the financing system, because success of any pilot, any innovation will depend upon scaling up. And scaling up would require finance at a reasonable rate of interest. And if it is in interest, I'm going to be working with Ministry of Cooperatives now. Very powerful person is heading that. If we convince one person to change this bit, you can unleash a revolution from an innovation to revolution. That's the last thought I'll. Precision agriculture is the ultimate answer to feed humanity and save the planet. And there are so many innovations, from sensors to exactly drip by drip where to keep it and all that, from drip irrigation to drones to whatever you want to apply. I can't go into all those GIS and all that. All those things are there. The challenge is technology is there to solve the problems. We are failing to scale that up in the right manner because the policies, existing policies of 1960s and 70s, and they are becoming an obstruction. Who is going to adopt drip if there is a free power and everything is on? So that's the problem. So we need to repurpose these subsidies. It may start with PDS thing. Why do we need only wheat and rice only to a rice producer? In Chhattisgarh, they are giving free rice to a rice producer. In Bihar, why? Give them food coupons, let them buy 20 commodities and these PDS shops can be converted into nutritious hubs. So you diversify the consumption basket. That will ultimately diversify your production basket. Otherwise, shouting millet, how many people are going to do? I mean, the mass that needs this, you are giving free rice, free wheat. Same thing in fertilizer, biofertilizer. Why they are not being subsidized same extent as chemical fertilizer? You give them fertilizer coupons. These are the types of fertilizers. You want to do natural kheti, you want to use that gobar and all that, whatever manures type of things or biofertilizers should be allowed. So give them freedom. I'm not saying reduce the subsidies because that's another dimension of, you are controlling the output prices. Indian farmers are net taxed. There is a 300-page report on the OECD website we have done for 20 years analysis. Farmers on output prices like export controls at the drop of a hat are being taxed on the output side and subsidized on the input side. So one foot is on the brake, the other is on the accelerator. We don't know what we are doing. India is one of the few countries which is still taxing its agriculture. So I'm not saying reduce or eliminate these subsidies. I'm saying repurpose, realign these subsidies, which will take care of the consumers, more diversified diets, PDS side, and more diversified nutrients that the plants will need to produce that, and they will be in line with the planet's concerns of soil, water, air, and biodiversity, the SWAB. I leave you with the thought of SWAB. Thank you.